package.json. In the dev dependencies, at the bottom, we'll type comma and paste. And we'll remove all these duplicates. So I'll remove ESLint, and I'll remove these duplicates, and these duplicates, and these duplicates, and remove this until there are no more duplicates remaining. And now we'll save, and then we're going to run npm install to make sure we successfully install all these packages. In the command line, we'll go to the tab for the TypeScript project, and we'll run npm install. And now we can scroll up and delete package.json. And we'll keep going. For readme.md, we didn't change this file, so we can delete it. And this file, setuptest.js, is new. So we'll move this over to the TypeScript project. And we'll scroll up, and we're going to move over vite.config.js. So in here, we added a bunch of configurations. So in the TypeScript project, we're going to drag vite.config.ts at the bottom, and we're going to move our changes over. So inside the config, we added some stuff for the React config. So we're going to select this React config and copy, and then select this code, remove it, and paste. And we'll keep going. So all of these configs are new. So we can just select this code, and then copy, and inside the TypeScript version, we're going to paste and save. So now we moved all of our changes over to the new project, and we can delete this file. And I'll close this for now. And finally, vtest.config.js is new. So we can drag it into the project. And now we moved all of our changes over into the TypeScript project, and I can delete this copy. Next, we're going to go into the TypeScript project, and we're going to fix the errors. First, we'll open main.tsx. And in here, instead of importing from app.jsx, the file is now app.tsx. So we're going to update that. Also, we have an error here. So this code tries to get an element from the page using the ID root. However, this element might not exist. So TypeScript gives us an error, telling us this value might be null. However, if we check our index.html and scroll down, we have an element here with the ID of root. So we know that this element definitely exists. In main.tsx, to tell TypeScript that this value definitely exists, at the end, we're going to add exclamation and save. So this tells TypeScript that this value definitely exists and it will not be null. And now the error is gone. Next, we'll open app.tsx. And up here, we get some errors when we are trying to import these files. The reason we get these errors is because these files are still .jsx files or JavaScript files. So we could rename all of our files to .tsx, but then TypeScript will start doing type checking in these files, and we may get a bunch of errors. Instead, in our files, we can scroll down to tsconfig.app.json. And inside here, we're going to add a setting, double quotes, allow capital J S, colon, true, and comma, and save. So this setting lets us mix TypeScript and JavaScript files in our project. So now in app.tsx, our TypeScript code can also import from JavaScript files, and it won't cause an error. So the allow.js setting lets us gradually convert a JavaScript project to TypeScript, one file at a time. Now that we've fixed the errors, let's run this project again to see if our e-commerce project works with TypeScript. In the command line, make sure you're in e-commerce project TS, and we're going to npm run dev and press enter. And now if we open this URL in the browser and refresh, and now you can see that our e-commerce project is working with TypeScript. If we try some of the features, like add to cart, you'll see that everything still works. If this does not work for you, you can check the troubleshooting guide in the description. Now let's go back to our code, and let's rename our folders so that we use TypeScript by default. We're going to scroll up, and we're going to rename e-commerce project. Right-click, rename to e-commerce project -js for JavaScript. And then we're going to rename e-commerce project -ts to e-commerce project. So now, by default, our project will be using TypeScript. And just to make sure, we're going to go to the command line and stop the Vite server, and we're going to delete all our tabs. So here we'll also Control-C to stop the backend and delete all the tabs. And then we'll reopen the command line using the terminal menu and new terminal. And we're going to restart the backend using cd e-commerce-backend npm run dev and create a new tab. And we'll run the front end, cd e-commerce-project and npm run dev. And in the browser, we'll refresh, and our TypeScript project still works. We'll go to VS Code, and finally, we're going to organize these folders a little bit. So right now, we're no longer using the e-commerce project JavaScript version or the React Basics folder. So let's click outside, and we'll click here to create a new folder, and let's call it old-projects. And then we'll drag the JavaScript version into here, and we'll move React Basics into here. So now our folders are a little bit more organized. So now let's save this into Git. We'll open the Git section, and at the top, we'll use the message convert e-commerce project to TypeScript and commit. Next, we're going to learn an intro to TypeScript with React. First, we'll go into our files, and in the project, we're going to go to source, the utils folder, and we're going to look at money.js. Currently, this is a JavaScript file. That means there is no type checking in this code. So we're going to convert this to TypeScript by right-clicking and rename, and we'll rename it to money.ts or TypeScript. So this converts the file into TypeScript, and now it will enable type checking. And now we will get an error here. So this error says amount sent implicitly has an any type. So what this means is that earlier we learned the feature type inference, which means TypeScript can figure out the type automatically. However, in this situation, TypeScript does not have enough information to figure out the type of amount sent. So we have to set the type manually. To set the type of a parameter, after this parameter, we're going to type colon, space, and then the type of this value. So in this case, amount sent should be a number. So we're going to type number and save. And now that TypeScript knows what type of value this is, the error will go away. And now we successfully converted this file to TypeScript. Let's do another example. We're going to go to the components folder, and we're going to convert header.jsx into TypeScript. So we're going to rename this file to header.tsx. So tsx is just a TypeScript file, but the x means we can write HTML inside this file. So it's just like JSX, except it uses TypeScript. So now this converts the file to TypeScript, and it enables type checking, and we get some errors here. If we look at this error, we get a similar error. Cart implicitly has an any type. So again, this means that TypeScript does not have enough information to figure out the type of cart automatically. So we have to set the type manually. We might try to add the type after cart, like this. However, this is not how we add a type to this code. Because remember, this code is actually a shortcut for this code. This is called the destructuring shortcut. So this whole thing is the parameter. So we need to add the type here after the parameter. So this code is a shortcut for props, which is an object. To tell TypeScript that this is an object, here we're going to type curly brackets. And then inside here, we can also tell TypeScript what properties are in this object. So in this object, we have a cart property. So in the type, we're also going to add a cart property. And remember that the cart is an array like this. So we're also going to tell TypeScript that this cart is an array using colon and square bracket semicolon. So again, this code tells TypeScript that this value is an object with a property called cart, and the cart is an array. Next, we can also tell TypeScript what is inside this array. In front of the array, we can type curly brackets to tell TypeScript that this is an array of objects. And inside this object, we can also tell TypeScript what properties each object has. So inside our cart array, each object has a product ID. And this product ID is a string. So we can tell that to TypeScript using colon, string, semicolon. And each object also has a quantity. And this is a number. So we can tell that to TypeScript using colon, number, semicolon. And each object has a delivery option ID, which is a string. So colon, string, semicolon. So using this code, we can tell TypeScript exactly what type of value this is. It's an object with a property called cart, and the cart is an array. And each value in the array has these three properties. So now TypeScript can actually look at the rest of our code and check if each value in the array has a quantity. And if we accidentally misspell quantity here, like this, TypeScript can use this type here to check if we made a mistake. So this helps us avoid a lot of mistakes when we're coding. So let's add that back and save. Next, we're going to organize this code a little bit. So putting a complex type directly in the code like this is a little hard to read. So we can actually take this type and then save it separately. Above this component, we can use type space and then give this a name. So here, this value is the props for the header component. So we'll name this header props. And we'll type equal. And we're going to move this type up here. So we'll select this type and cut. And then in here, we're going to paste. So this is called a type alias. And it works just like a variable, but for types. So we can save a type in here, and then we can use this type later in our code. For example, down here, we can just use this type, header props. And it will substitute this type into our code, just like a variable. And now our code is much cleaner. So that's an intro to how to use TypeScript with React. We basically add types to React features like props. So now let's save, and we'll save these changes into Git. In the Git section, at the top, we'll use the message convert money utils and header to TypeScript and commit. Finally, we're going to learn how to use AI, or artificial intelligence, with React. After we learn React, we can use AI to help us write React code faster. The easiest way to get started with AI is to use GitHub Copilot, which is built into VS Code. Before we begin, AI tools are changing very quickly. If something in the section is not working, you can check the troubleshooting guide in the description. To set up GitHub Copilot, we're going to install the GitHub Copilot extension. So in the extension section, we need to make sure we have the GitHub Copilot extension installed. If it's not installed, we can search up here for GitHub Copilot and install this extension. Once we have that installed, we're going to click this Copilot icon up here. And we'll need to log in to our GitHub account. So we'll click Sign In. And then we need to log in to GitHub. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can create one by clicking here or going to github.com. So I'm going to log into my GitHub account. And then I'll click Continue. And I'll click here to go back to VS Code. Once we finish the setup, we can start using some features of AI. The first feature is autocomplete. So let's say that we're in the header. And we'll close this window for now. And let's scroll down to the HTML, and we're going to go to the right section. Let's say that inside the header, we want to add a link to a login page. So here, we can just start typing in this code, and the AI will give us some autocomplete suggestions. To accept these suggestions, we can press Tab. So this creates a new link and some text. And I'll press Enter, and it gives another suggestion. So I press Tab, and this creates the closing tag for the link. So you notice that the autocomplete is very smart because the AI can read and understand the rest of our code. And it can suggest code that follows the same patterns as the rest of our code. For example, here it creates a link element, and it gave it a class name that is similar to the other class names. However, when using AI, we may need to go in and modify things to make sure we get exactly what we want. So here, the AI created a link to the home page, but what we actually want is a link to a login page. So I can click here and modify the URL path to /login. And I can also change the text to login. And I'll change this to login. And I don't really have an icon for the login page, so we can delete it. And I'll change this to login. So using AI, I'm able to write this code a lot faster. Another feature of AI is we can give the AI instructions. For example, let's remove this code for now. And we can click this Copilot icon, and it will open this chat window. And inside here, we can just tell the AI what we want to do. For example, in here, we can say in the header, add a link to the login page. And make sure in this dropdown, you have agent or edit selected. And we'll press enter. And the AI will make edits to our code. So here, you can see that it added a login link like before. So we can press keep to keep these changes or undo if we don't like these changes. So this looks good to me. So I'm going to press keep. And again, I'll go in here and modify it a bit. So here, it added the login link after the orders link, but I want to put this before the orders. So I can just select this code and cut, and at the top, paste that code. So as you can see, by using AI, we can write React code faster. But you'll notice that we still need to understand the code to check if it's what we want and to modify the code if we need to. So it's important to learn how to code first, and then we can use AI to help us code faster. So now I'll go into the Git section, and I'm actually going to undo these changes because this was just an example. And that's the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we learned some of the updates in the new version of React. We learned how to set up the React compiler to automatically optimize our React code. We set up a new TypeScript React project using Create Vite. We did an intro to TypeScript and learned basic features like type checking and type inference. We converted our e-commerce project to TypeScript. We learned how to use TypeScript with React. And we learned how to use AI with React to help us write code faster. Here are some exercises to help you practice what we learned in this lesson. Good job on finishing this React tutorial. If you want to continue learning with me, you can check out the premium version of this course where I will be adding extra lessons and projects in the future. Currently, the premium version has 11 lessons, but I'll be adding more lessons in the future. You can also check out the membership for extra content on AI and backend. As the next step after learning React, I recommend moving to the backend and learning the command line and Node.js. I'll be putting my work in progress on these technologies inside the membership first, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks so much for watching and taking this course with me, and I'll see you in the next one.